Welcome to Big Papa Rob's podcast Story Rewind, The Missing. I'm Big Papa Rob. Each of my stories are about one of the many missing people out there. I rewind the story of a missing person in hopes that someone will hear this story and can share information to help find this person. There is always someone who knows something that can help find a missing person. Happy New Year to everyone. I took some time off in December for my wedding anniversary and Christmas. I hope everyone had a good holiday. The story I will tell you today is about Paul Aaron Triplett. He was last seen January 2nd, 2002. His case is classified as a missing persons case, but all the information surrounding his case leans towards him being murdered. Stick around for his story. Paul's sister Heather reached out to me, telling me her brother's story. When I started investigating this story, I couldn't find any news article or any other podcasts about Paul Triplett's case. The only information I could find was from NameUS and the Charle project, which had very limited information. I did an opens record request with Kentucky State Police and found that the 69-page report was very interesting, but also wondered what was left out of the report. There were several pages missing based on the page numbering system that they used, and appeared to have set as a cold case since 2016. Let's rewind this story to Paul's earliest beginnings. Paul Aaron Triplett was born June 26, 1981, to Paul Triplett and Janice Patterson. I'm going to let Heather describe her brother. And tell me about your brother growing up. What was he like?
He was a crackerjack. He was always goofing off, telling jokes, making you laugh. The life of the party, so to speak. And he was younger. He was 2 years younger than me. And then I have a sister that's 2 years older than me. So he was the baby of the family, and just a really good kid.
Heather went on to say that in middle school, Paul played football, but as he was transitioning to high school, he got into playing guitar with his buddies in a band. His junior year, he moved from Kentucky to Michigan after his parents split up and lived with an aunt and uncle. He ended up dropping out of high school, but did work on getting his GED. Unfortunately, he went missing before he received his GED diploma in the mail. Paul became a father in 1998 to Marcella Triplett. Around the time he turned 18, he went to work for another uncle that lived in Michigan as well, that offered him a job and a room above the bakery he owned. Things seemed to be going well with Paul during this time. In mid to late 2001, Paul appeared to get caught up in the rise of the opioid crisis, specifically OxyContin, and he appeared to discover that there was money to be made in buying OxyContin in Michigan at about $35 a pill and bringing them back to Kentucky to sell for about $65 a pill. Let's talk about the opioid crisis in Kentucky at the time. Overdose deaths in Kentucky increased by over 50% from 2019 to 2020. In 2020, drug-involved overdose deaths jumped to more than 90,000. During this time, OxyContin was in high demand, and doctors were prescribing it for almost any type of ache or pain. Because it was easy to get, it became easy to be addicted to it. The retail price of OxyContin for a 80 milligram pill was about $6 a pill. The street value was worth between $65 and $80 a pill. Paul's sister Heather said mid to late 2001, Paul would drive back to Kentucky almost every weekend, presuming this was when he started trafficking Oxy to Kentucky from Michigan. December 28, 2001, Paul had made a trip back to Kentucky, and based on statements made to the police, a person of interest in this case that we'll refer to him as Mr. C, Paul reportedly brought 100 pills to sell to Mr. C, but when Paul went to sell them to Mr. C, he didn't have the money to pay Paul, so Paul didn't give him the pills. Instead of taking the pills back to Michigan, he reportedly left them with his sister Amanda. Paul returned to Michigan, taking his girlfriend with him. This apparently pissed Mr. C off because Amanda found someone else to buy the pills. On January 3, 2002, Mr. C is reported to have called Paul in Michigan and wanted him to bring 200 pills immediately. But Paul wasn't going to make another trip back to Kentucky until January 5th. It was also reported by family that previously Paul had dealt with Mr. C through a middleman when selling to Mr. C, but that on this trip back to Kentucky, Mr. C had asked Paul to deal with him directly and to make the transaction just before he left to go back to Michigan. This was not how Paul reportedly handled this type of transaction. He normally would hand off the pills to dealers or the middlemen as soon as he got back to Kentucky and collect the money and then spend time with family. On January 4th, Paul and his girlfriend left Michigan and arrived at Paul's dad's house at about 3 a.m. on the 5th, and they stayed the night there. Sometime on the 5th, Paul's girlfriend went back to college where she was attending. On January 6th, Paul called his girlfriend to see if she and her dorm mate wanted to come over to his sister's house to watch a movie. She agreed, and Paul and his brother-in-law went to pick the girls up from their college. It appears that it started snowing and got pretty bad, so the girls stayed the night. According to reports, Mr. C had called and talked to Paul while he was at his sister's house between the 6th and the 7th. Based on reports, it's unclear how much Paul's girlfriend knew about his drug dealings. Based on her statements to the police, she didn't know anything about it. On January 7th, 2001, Paul left Amanda's house to take the girls back to their college in Pippa Passes, Kentucky, and dropped the girls off at the college around 11 a.m. According to police statements from both girls, he was going to head back to Michigan, and his girlfriend was expecting him to call her when he reached Winchester, Kentucky, where he had cell signal again. According to his sister Amanda's statement, after he dropped the girls off at the college, he had told her he was going to stop at a good friend's house and then head back to Michigan and would call when he reached Winchester, Kentucky, and got good cell signal again. If Paul's good friend happened to be Mr. C, it would have taken him about 30 minutes to drive from the college to where Mr. C was reportedly living at. Once he would have left this address, it would have taken him about 2.5 hours to drive to Winchester, where he would have had cell service to call his sister Amanda and his girlfriend. Even if he had spent an hour at the good friend's house, He should have reached Winchester and called by 3 or 4 p.m. According to Heather, his sister Amanda became worried about Paul when he didn't call her by late afternoon on the 7th, and she tried to report him missing sometime late on the 7th, but the police wouldn't take the report. According to Heather, Amanda called back on the 10th after the 72-hour waiting period that was required to make a report, but the report doesn't appear to have been completed till the 11th. According to Heather, the officer that took the initial report on the 10th didn't file the report, and the information was lost. For years, it was officially reported that the last time anyone saw Paul was when he dropped his girlfriend and dorm mate off at the school on January 7th at 11 a.m. According to a statement in the police report on January 16, 2002, detectives had talked to Mr. C and another man we'll just call Mr. J. Mr. J may have been the dealer or the middleman, but there's no proof of this other than speculation. Both of these guys denied even knowing Paul at the time. On January 17th, they had a helicopter from the National Guard fly over the area between where the girls went to school and an area they referred to as Cody, which is near Carr Creek Lake. This is about a 20-mile radius depending on the route taken. They stated that they also searched the lake area and all the strip mine sites, but there was no sign of Paul or his truck. On March 14th, Paul's 1998 green Chevrolet S10 pickup truck was located by the Lexington police in the Samaritan Hospital parking garage on level C, backed into a parking spot. It appeared to have been parked there for some time. The truck was covered in dust and still had residue from salt on the sides of the truck. In the report, they stated they found a fingerprint on a plate in the glove box, but there was no follow-up information as to whom the fingerprint belonged to. By the way, Lexington is about 140 miles away from the area he was last seen at. According to a witness interview done November of 2002, this witness says he saw Mr. C pistol whip Paul and that Paul had blood running down his head. This witness had left the house and parked down the road from Mr. C's and saw Paul's truck approach, but it wasn't Paul driving the truck, and the person driving the truck was wearing latex gloves. There has been many people report rumors that Paul was killed and buried in a hand-dug well on Mr. C's property and or his sister's property. Going through the reports, it was also reported that Paul was killed and cut up with a blowtorch and fed to hogs. A witness that heard this story offered to wear a wire so the police could record the conversation, but it doesn't appear that the police ever followed up on this either. Another person made statements that Paul had talked about disappearing to Mexico. It looks like the police looked into this because Paul's sister Amanda and her husband was gifted a trip to Cancun, and the police questioned them about their trip. It looks like this line of questioning took place back in 2007. Also in February of 2007, the police discovered someone in Michigan was using Paul's Social Security number to pay power bills. This appeared to have been investigated, but didn't turn up any leads according to the report. Apparently, this was a case of stolen ID. After this, it appeared that the case went cold till a new detective took over the case in 2016. The new detective went to investigate the area on Flax Patch Road where Mr. C had lived. This new detective mentions that he wanted DNA samples from the family, but Heather's memory from that time doesn't quite match up with what the report says. Also, in this 2016 report, it appeared that they had gone looking for any hand-dug wells in the area Mr. C had lived, and the report stated he wanted to come back and bring canines to the area, but there doesn't appear to be any follow-up on that either. Take a listen to what Heather and their family discovered in November and what the family had told the police in the very beginning.
In November, just by chance, I found out that his DNA and dental records were never attached to his missing persons case. And so for almost 22 years, we have thought that information was there because at the time in 2002, there was a local dentist there. And I can remember, I don't know exactly who, but one of us had called to see if she had dental records of him from when he was maybe like in high school or grade school. And she confirmed that she did, and she would make a copy and would leave it to be picked up. And then also he had done a DNA paternity test to prove that his daughter was his. And that was done like over in Letcher County, Whitesburg area. And we also told the officers or detectives then where they could get that information. So we assumed they picked it up and attached it to his case, but it never did. They never did. And so just by chance in November, I was trying to get an answer as is his DNA and dental attached. And so I filed an open records request and discovered on my own that in November of 2002, 11 months after he went missing, the authorities had a witness come forward that they could confirm that my brother's truck was there at this guy's house and that somebody else drove the truck out of the little holler or road that he lived on. And it wasn't my brother driving the truck. And so, and then at some point they're looking for a body in a hand-dug well on this guy's property. And the thing about it is this is what we told the authorities from day one, that he was going to this guy's house. And this guy was kind of shady about what he wanted when he came there. And we told him that his last known place was not Alice Lloyd College when he dropped off his then girlfriend and her friend. He dropped them off, and then he was going to this guy's house to make an illegal transaction. I think in the very beginning, my sister might have said to pick up like satellite cards.
Yeah.
But within 3 days, family were talking and we got more information. So we told them everything. And, but from day one, my sister said that she thought he was murdered. And we told them that from day one, and we kind of thought or believed for 22 years that they either thought we were lying or making it up, or their hands were tied and they couldn't pursue that person.
Heather stated in our interview that police took DNA samples from their mother this past November, but there was no reports that anything was going on with the case since 2016, according to the files that I received. Even though throughout the police reports there are many references to Mr. C, there weren't any reports that they searched his residence at the time Paul went missing, and very little reference to any interviews done with Mr. C, other than when they said they didn't know Paul. Now, maybe this is because it's an open case. They didn't release that information in the open records request. At least that's what I hope. At this point, all we have is speculation that Paul was murdered. And this case is still classified as a missing persons case. There is a family left to wonder what happened to their son, brother, and even his daughter Michaela, who was 4 at the time. I'm sure still wonders what happened to Daddy. January 7th, this family will have been searching for answers for 22 years. In talking to Heather about her brother's disappearance, all they want at this point is to know where he is. They're not seeking justice. They want to find Paul and have a proper burial and closure for the family. She has asked me to give out contact information in case someone wants to contact her anonymously, letting the family know exactly where Paul is. I will post her email address in the show notes. Let's talk about Paul's description and information again. Paul Aaron Triplett went missing on January 7th, 2002. He was last seen in the Flax Patch Hollow area in Little Car, Kentucky, after dropping his girlfriend off at college in Pippa Pass, Kentucky. Paul was 20 years old at the time he went missing and would be 42 years old now. He's 6 foot 2 inches tall and weighed 150 pounds at the time. He has brown hair, green eyes, and he also had a goatee. He has a triangular birthmark on his lower back and a linear scar on his lower abdomen. He has a dragon tattoo on his right calf and a bird tattoo on his right shoulder. Some of the key people in this case has passed away. If you know anything that can lead to the whereabouts of Paul Triplett, please come forward and let the authorities know where he is. Please contact the Kentucky State Police at 606-435-6069. The case number is 13-02-0151. Or you can contact Heather at the email listed in the show notes. I wanted to take a moment to share some information about a previous case I covered regarding Andy Wagner. Her mother, Elaine Garcia, passed away December 18th in Evansville, Indiana. She had dedicated all of her time in trying to find her daughter. Family and friends continue to try to find answers as to where Andy is. We send our prayers to the family. I had communicated with Elaine several times, and she was such a sweet lady. She will dearly be missed. The stories I tell about the missing, I hope arms you with new information about this missing person that might lead to finding them. Additionally, I hope that you will share this information about this person in hopes that by sharing, it may lead to locating this person. As with almost all missing person cases, there is someone out there that knows something. Please come forward and contact the authorities. Once again, I'm Big Papa Rob, and this was an independent podcast called Story Rewind. Story Rewind, The Missing, is written, produced, and edited by Big Papa Rob. I couldn't do this without the support of my wonderful wife, aka Big Mama. For a donation to help me cover my operating costs, you can buy me a cup of coffee. You can find the link in my show notes or on my social media pages. Your support would be greatly appreciated. I would appreciate a 5-star rating if you listen to my podcast through Apple Podcasts. And finally, if you have a story idea, please contact me through my social media. A link to my social media accounts is listed in the show notes. I would love to hear from you. Today's music was The Shield by Hot Dope from Pixabay. This was a Big Papa Rob Podcast 2024. See the show notes for links to the reference material used in this podcast.